Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Christabel, and today we'll be having a day in a life series of a digital infrastructure security professional. I hope you're all doing great, and I can see you're all tuned in from wherever you are. I've seen lots of countries coming up. Right into it, we will want to thank our sponsors, our technical sponsors. They have made it possible for us to have this program. Would like to thank Infosec Institute, ISC2, Cisco Networking Academy, Fortinet, Checkpoint, Policy Wizard, Practical DevSecOps, INE, Microsoft ADC, and ATO. So I'm sure you're excited to join us today. And as we begin each session, we begin with the Cyber Girls mantra and we'll delve right into it. This is the heartbeat of our program. So I am knowledgeable, resilient, and excellent. I am a fountain of value and an ardent problem solver. I am a voracious learner, so nothing is too difficult for me to master. I am a doer with genius intellect. I am a cyber girl. I'm sure you're all excited today and you're wondering what we are going to delve into. Critical infrastructure security professional. What is this about? So we would invite our guest for today. Our guest is Veronica Rausch, and she's a very amazing professional. She lives and works in San Diego region of California as a critical infrastructure protection technical advisor. That's a mouthful for San Diego Gas and Electric, a Sempra energy utility, leveraging her skills gained from her former career as a certified crime scene investigator. Veronica and her team work to ensure the security and resilience of the electrical power grid by making sure its critical assets are safe from cyber and physical threats, as federally mandated by the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC. So welcome, Veronica, today to our session.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Christabel, and to all the cyber girls. Good afternoon. I'm impelled to say good morning. It's 7 o'clock in the morning where I'm calling in today, but I understand it's the afternoon for you. So thank you for having me. Very excited to be here today. Do a
Thank you
quick
for joining
introduction.
us
Yeah.
today. So I would like to, yes, so I would like you to tell us a bit about your career. Tell us a bit about your career in critical infrastructure security. How did you get motivated to, join this career, and how has your motivation evolved over time?
It has been. So I am a career changer. So I invite everyone to enjoy the field because it is really for everyone. There's room for people who are new to the field. There's room for people as myself who change careers. Christabel mentioned I was formerly a certified crime scene investigator. So it's been quite a career change. But I realized at one point that I wanted to, I got kind of tired of being on call very often. So my career change started a little bit before COVID. So I'm about a little over 5 years into my career change. My first job was working in a network and security operations center with Motorola. We were doing 911 critical operations. So for some reason, I had always moved from mission critical sites to mission critical operations. I was very fortunate because a recruiter had found me, a female recruiter, and saw something in me that I didn't actually see in myself. She had realized that I was forensically trained and that I understood networks, and I understood security. So she recommended a job in the compliance area of critical infrastructure. So and that sort of led to where I'm at now, where I decided, COVID, it was the middle of the plague. It was kind of scary to leave the job, but it sounded really exciting. It sounded really cool. I thought this is great, and I realized that very few women were working in this field, and I felt compelled to represent for the ladies. I felt that it was important to have more women representation. It was very similar in crime scenes, so I began. I'm not sure if anyone here is even aware of critical in terms of different types of cybersecurity. It has various names. And we have operational technology, we have industrial control systems. There's an entire sea of acronyms that come with the territory. So you will often say OT for operational technology, and we'll say industrial control systems for, or ICS for the title, and they're often used interchangeably. I'm always happy to describe what it is before I get into talking about the subject at hand, because when we talk about operational technology, we're talking about OT systems, operational technology systems. So, in terms of being cyber physical systems, so we're looking at it, it just means that these systems have digital components, and they control something in the physical real world. So we're moving from digital to cyber, and that's one of the really exciting things about this field is that we do things, if there's a device in the real world and it has a, some type of security control on it or any control on it, it has connected to network connectivity, then that's essentially considered, something within operational technology, OT. And that's something I work with very closely with San Diego Gas and Electric here in California.
That's quite interesting and a lot. Seems very detailed. Okay, so you've mentioned a lot of things, how you've had a career change and how that has, because of who you are as a person and a girl's girl. So I would like to know, what is your typical day like in this very unique situation that you found yourself in, the critical infrastructure security? And I'd like to also ask, was it very different from what you were doing before, or it's something new now? So, like, what are the roles and responsibilities that you have now, and how does your day look like generally?
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. I've been able to leverage the skills from my former career. And really, I think about, while I was preparing for a career as a crime scene investigator, I was a waitress. And I think about the skills that I gained as a waitress in customer service, which serves me very well because in the sector of critical infrastructure, you speak with so many people. It's teams that work together. You're not working independently. So when I think about a typical day, the most independent part of my day is a lot of it is in the morning when I start having my coffee and I'm listening to operational technology or industrial security podcasts. So I'll wake up and just start my day with learning. I just start from the beginning. It's very important to stay on top of the news. And so I'll listen to podcasts such as The Control Loop, which is a well-known industrial control podcast by Dragos. I listen to the Industrial Security podcast. I listen to the SANS Internet Storm Center to get some quickly, cybersecurity news of the day. And a lot of that is just to come to the day prepared. Is there anything that I need to be aware of today at work? That's in the news, or is there a critical, vulnerability that I need to address right away? So that's typically how I'll start my day, emails. And then we have a morning briefing. So it's basically a threat assessment of sorts. So we review any sort of security alerts or incident reports, any type of threat intelligence that's become available to us on that day. We want to be aware of. If, for example, there's an emerging threat, we pay very closely to any sort of new vulnerabilities. They use a scoring system. It's called a Common Vulnerability Scoring System, so CVSS. And they give scores to these vulnerabilities. And if something is revealed that has a very high score, we need to address that right away. So I'll begin doing that. And then we go into a process of, I will say that no 2 days are the same in this field. You can do a variety of different things, and nothing is really ever goes like clockwork. We're kind of moving around and changing the direction very often. So I can be doing risk assessments, performing vulnerability scans, A scan can be a passive scan in an operating environment. A scan can be active when we have a controlled, a scheduled maintenance outage window. One of the things that we have to do is we continue our operations while we do our job, which makes our work very unique and challenging. Other things that I'm responsible for is I do a lot of the patch management, so security patch management of our industrial control systems that are out in the field that own, essentially that run and operate our electrical grid. And then we do a lot of preparation in advance, tabletop exercises to prepare for any potential drills, any incident response. We collaborate with teams to help refine those response plans. And then I also perform training. So I have training that I will deliver to our teams who are out in the field. So sometimes I'm moving around from building to building or, to another region of my city to deliver training. And we'll perform physical security inspections. And so, like I said, there's really never an A to Z in my given day. I'm kind of hopping around with a lot of responsibilities and addressing anything that is, the highest, that has the highest import first, of course.
Okay, so you work with the priorities, and then as things come and go, you work with them. That's great to know. And I'm learning a lot too. Seems very interesting. So you've mentioned how your skills from your former job have helped you where you are now in critical infrastructure security. So, can you tell us, the cyber girls that are here with us today, can you tell us some key technical and non technical skills that they should have to be successful in a field like yours, and how to develop these skills or where they can acquire these skills from?
Yes. So the beauty of the critical infrastructure sector is that nobody has this knowledge. Nobody is born with this knowledge. And you'll pick up a lot of things in your studies that are very specific to cybersecurity. And what we see is that there's people who come from different areas. And the two key areas in this sector is information technology, which I'm sure many of you are very well aware of, the IT side, the digital side of it, which is good information in terms of having some fundamentals. It's very difficult to do this work if you don't have some very basic IT fundamentals from the technical side of it. On the other side of it, there's of the technical area is the operational technology side. So, learning the technology that monitors and manages these industrial systems is another skill. Now, no one expects you to be an electrical engineer as a cybersecurity professional in this field. However, you will work very closely with electrical engineers, with system operators, with asset owners. And what you do is you start to begin to have conversations with these teams to learn about their areas of expertise. And everyone lends their areas of expertise. So here's a sector where you will learn IT, information technology, you will learn operational technology as you continue to study cybersecurity. So it takes an extra layer of skills. And, on top of that, I will say the soft skills become essential in this field. As I mentioned, because you work with so many teams, you do not work on an island in this work. A lot of the bigger jobs we have are performed during a planned outage window. So we're working with teams well in advance. We're preparing, we're training, we are performing on site. And so it requires quite a bit of organization of different personnels between legal teams, between engineers, between the compliance teams, between federal regulators, between engineers and operators. So on the soft side of those skills that are required is really being able to communicate effectively. That's where I say my work as a waitress when I was younger and in my studies became very important in this field today, because I learned how to, really think on the fly and, communicate effectively, and to talk with CISOs, when they're panicking, there's a critical incident, how to be able to take very technical knowledge and communicate it to non-technical people is a very essential skill for this type of work.
That's interesting to know that your soft skills and skills that you've had from other jobs rightly fit into this area. So it doesn't matter if you really do not have the skills to get into it, but once you work on it and once you learn, you'd be able to fit right into this role. So you mentioned about
Absolutely.
yes, you mentioned about stakeholders like engineers and CISOs. So how do you ensure that when you're working with these people, the critical infrastructure security, the system is integrated into your work? How do you ensure that all these other people follow maybe what you have informed them about, so that the system's life cycle is integrated and it's working and functioning properly?
A lot of it is preparation, preparation, preparation. You can never prepare enough in advance. We prepare for the worst and then we keep our fingers crossed and hope that it doesn't. So we do very routine type of referring to table type exercises. It's sort of a mock crisis. We do these regularly, not only with our own utility, but we work with other utilities. We participate in an event called GridX, which is with other energy utilities, specifically in the United States, and we do a very large scale test. It's a mock test. We don't actually break anything, but we walk through the event as though something was broken. We sit there and these are the plans we've laid out in advance. So we have our teams, our very integrated teams, to include our incident response teams. Those are going to be our I say, like, the field folks. The field, we have the people who work internally, and then we have the people who respond to the fields, because a lot of the work that we do is online. Like, for example, I work a hybrid schedule where I work from home 3 days a week, but it's not unusual for me to put on my fire resistant gear. I have to wear clothing, very protective clothing that's flame resistant, and I have a construction helmet, safety goggles, and I'm heading out into the physical field to go check on a cyber asset in an electrical substation. And what we find is sometimes, there's a lot of threats to the electrical grid, the greatest being that of nation state threat actors. You want to take down a society, take down their critical infrastructure, take down any of those sectors of critical infrastructure, whether, I happen to work in the electrical sector, but I mean, if you're talking about taking someone's energy or their water, their wastewater, their emergency services, taking away healthcare, banking systems, transportation systems. Once you start looking at a dismantling of those systems, we have real societal collapse at that point. So we think about the work that we do and why we have to prepare so much in advance for any type of incident. So it really does come down to knowing who the people are. When it's time to respond, I'll show you on my cell phone, I have numbers in there that I don't even have to look them up. If I have to call the FBI cyber team, I've got it on my cell phone, because this is an emergency, a real nation emergency. The truth is that we fortunately don't see a lot of a lot of what we see is operational errors. An operational error in critical infrastructure systems or an operational technology can often look like a cyber attack, when it's really just a normal technical failure of a system in the field. So we have to have the appropriate teams to make those assessments and to make sure that this truly is a cyber threat. I've heard stories of people who woke up CISOs at 4 o'clock in the morning, when it was just a squirrel who was chomping on something they shouldn't have been. And so squirrels are very real threats in the work that we do, because they can also wreak havoc and cause damage. So it's critical for us to have the knowledge and prepare in advance of these threats so that we know how to respond to them and that we have response plans in place so that we can take action as needed and when needed. Fortunately, they don't happen too often, but when they do, they have high impact, very high impact, and they're very often, these are the type of incidents that you'll see largely globalized. You see it on the news. You see things such as, Stuxnet, you see Colonial Pipeline, things that can cause, societal distress will be on the news. And so we also have marketing and PR teams who have to come in and have those conversations. So again, it's a huge orchestration of personnel who have to come in and respond accordingly. And we have to practice a lot to ensure that that goes smoothly. As they say, it's not a matter of if, but when, with the present global threats, the present geopolitical landscape, that's the way to take down a nation is really shut down their critical infrastructure.
That seems like
Don't
a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a bad day. It's a bad day for us, yes.
Okay, so can you take us through some steps? I know that you said your routine is not stable, but maybe how you respond to an incident. So maybe you can give us an example, and then you can show us how you respond to that, security incidents within CIS. So can you walk us through some steps?
Yeah, so typically if we've identified that it truly is a cyber incident and not a squirrel, once that's been assessed, we bring the appropriate teams out. Typically, I will say first and foremost is the most important thing in responding to anything is the safety of people. One of the things I love about this sector is that if in IT, if you have a bad day, maybe you lose some data and systems shut down, and that's obviously not good for business operations. But in critical infrastructure, a bad day can cause a huge amount of destruction, but it can also endanger safety. It can endanger the lives. People can die when our systems are not operating correctly. And so I will say when we respond to something, one of the most important thing is the safety aspect. That's the first and the highest priority that takes precedence over any cyber threat, over anything, as we make sure that people are safe. If there is a system that has been compromised, which is now exposing, for example, in my field, we work with transformers. So this is sort of a device that controls voltage levels. So if we have an incident where now we have exposed voltages, and this is not a safe area to enter, we are not going to send our teams there until we assess that this is safe. Once the area is, in a way, it's very much like a crime scene. Once we assess that the situation is safe, we begin primarily with doing a risk assessment and prioritizing. Prioritization. We perform a thorough risk assessment. We're identifying any critical assets. Any vulnerabilities that this incident may have revealed, and any potential threats that might be there. And we will prioritize that based on the impact of the breach, or is it a failure? Some systems are going to require higher security levels than others, so we have to really make that assessment. And we have ongoing monitoring. So we have a team who will, we do have a SOC, a Security Operations Center, that regularly monitors our system performance. So we will do a part of, we'll monitor those performances. We monitor the security logs. We use our threat intelligence available, into this investigation. We're using, real-time analytics to detect any sort of suspicious behavior, any anomalous behavior that we don't typically see in our baselines. So we have to really adapt those security measures based on the changing need at that time. Other things we'll do is we kind of we're reviewing our network architecture. It's all been designed, a lot of the operational technology security architectures are built very differently, and they're designed to isolate critical components. So what you'll see very often is segmentation and micro segmentation. You might have one device with two firewalls on it, because that has been deemed to be, in front of a very critical asset, perhaps the most highest, the most vulnerable in our entire system. So it's important for us to make use of our network architecture and those diagrams to assess that items haven't been changed, that systems haven't been altered or compromised. We also will review our access control. We will have to determine who has access, authentication measures like who has accessed this recently, what time were they using it, was it off hours, again, looking for any unusual behavior. We're going to be reviewing when were our systems last patched, has this been patched recently, was there something, that didn't get patched on time. Typically, we're using redundant servers. We have, backup power. We have additional network paths that we create in our design of these systems that becomes very important if anything begins to fail. But again, a lot of it falls back on the planning that we did in advance, to really develop some robust incident response plans that include, procedures for security incidents. And it might not be like a security incident. We could have a natural disaster, another emergency. We could have Mother Nature could come in, and in California we're prone to earthquakes, so we have to be mindful of the other type of emergency that we can have, and of course the cyber squirrels that continue to haunt us. We have to be mindful of all of those incidents when we, not just security in this sector.
I like how everything you say goes back to preparation and safety. It's quite interesting to know that there are a lot of steps involved in this, and that you work very hard to ensure that assets are kept safe. So I would like to know, compared to other sectors in cybersecurity, what unique challenge do you face in critical infrastructure, and how do you address that challenge?
I will say the greatest challenge is what we refer to as the IT OT convergence. So again, information technology and operational technology. IT is very much the digital world, and in the digital world, we are very accustomed to doing things. It moves very fast, it moves very furiously. We are keeping up constantly. We always know there's new versions, there's updates, and it's very easy for us on a cell phone device to implement, an update or to install an update overnight. And as you may very well know, that once you update your phone, you typically need to reboot systems very often with a very basic, even a security patch. In operational technology, so for example, in my sector, in the energy sector, our job is to keep the lights on, always, always. I mean, we have to keep the power on. There is no, we don't have times when we actually have very rigid regulatory federal rules that mandate that we keep the lights on. There are very high fines when we don't. A lot of these started back in 2003. There was a huge blackout in northern of the United States. It went into Canada, and lives were lost. And so federal regulations were put in place to define how we keep those lights on. And as a result, we have operations that are impacted. So when we think about cybersecurity, as you're studying, you've probably learned about the CIA triad, the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability that becomes very critical in as cybersecurity, premise. The key thing in cybersecurity is the confidentiality. Is this really ensuring that our data is safe? Well, when you move to critical infrastructure, the critical aspect of it is operations, and so essentially it comes down to the availability aspect. We have to keep the lights on. We have to make sure that that power is available when you go up to a light switch and turn it on. The customer expects that light switch to go on. So we have to do our work. The most challenging part of our work is we have to perform our work while operations are running. And it introduces a lot of challenges. And this is where I will again emphasize how important it is to have these collaborations with your teams, because we have IT people who want to patch. And we have the OT people who, know very well that patch is going to break a system. And so we have to work very closely to ensure that our IT processes do not impact our OT processes. And that's where we have this OT and an IT integration that the teams have to work in advance. I'm very fortunate that where I work at, we have a laboratory where I can come in and, and begin the conversation before we actually implement anything in the field. We can sort of run a test practice of even something as simple as a security patch. I can test it in a controlled environment, and I can see, and I work with the teams and the engineers, who maybe sometimes will say, absolutely not, we're not doing this because it will break this system. We run it in the test environment and we realize, okay, yeah, that breaks. So we're going to try something else. So we have to find different ways to do things. In conventional IT, a lot of the work you do is very active. An active scan can break things in operational technology, can break industrial control systems. So a lot of times we have to use passive measures, such as, rather than running like an Nmap or a Nessus sort of a scanning feature, we will do something very passive. The goal in operational technology systems is to really gather the information from the operational technology side. Rather than having the IT push into OT, we prefer to do it the opposite way, where the IT does not control the operational technology. We only collect data from the OT. And so often that'll require a passive scan where we're just collecting things from a port in a controlled environment. Or we're leveraging a maintenance window. So perhaps once a year, we will shut down an electrical substation to perform, our update, to perform certain things that we can't normally do throughout the year. So that's something that's very different in critical infrastructure or in our OT systems, is that we aren't able to move at the pace that IT works because we can't shut things off and fix things. We have to do it while it's operating. And keep in mind that we're working with large, very robust systems that are dangerous. So there's a safety aspect to what we're doing. And it's one of the things I love most about what I do, is that there's just something very powerful about being, at the helm of I work with I connect it's considered a transient cyber asset, which is basically a fancy legal name for a laptop. But we have very dedicated laptops that are allowed to connect to these systems. And we have a giant monitor. It's called the human interface. And I go there, and there's something very empowering. I'm the only woman. I'm the first woman on my team. No man has done the job that I do right now. So I feel a lot of pressure as a woman to be exceptional. It's self-imposed, but it's important, to go in and to be safe and to perform this role. And I feel very, very powerful when I come in and I realize that I'm in charge of this responsibility, and I have the driver's seat, to an entire robust system that I control at my fingertips, at my laptop. You can't do that in IT, and that's one of the things I love about critical infrastructure, is working with those types of systems. So, I'll add to that. When I mention OT, I think a lot of, we can have something as complex as, launching a nuclear missile. Essentially you're looking at, a device that has a digital component that controls it, and it has network connectivity. So that could be anything. Every day you're probably working with some type of control system. When you switch a light on, that's a control system. If you change the temperature of a thermostat, that's a control system. If you're putting gasoline in a car, if you're putting petrol in a car, those are control systems to stop the flow of that. So we're looking at things, typically you'll see, we're not all obviously launching nuclear missiles, but we're talking about, a lot of things that are more common to critical infrastructure, like the manufacturing sector, for example. Consider vaccine production. Obviously COVID hasn't gone away, but if you can imagine, the vaccines that were developed to help treat COVID went in through huge manufacturing plants, which is obviously, critical infrastructure. Imagine if those recipes had been compromised by a malicious actor, and those vaccines, those formulas are compromised, and those were now shipped out into the world and, injected into people. We're talking again about the aspect of very real danger when critical infrastructure systems are compromised. Typically, though, in that spectrum, we're looking at things that move, conveyor belts, valves opening and closing, pressure system control, water tanks, flow systems, pipelines. Those are kind of the systems that we're working with. So we have to keep in mind, because digital, processes control things in the real world. Again, I will mention safety. It becomes the most critical, consideration when we do our work. I feel like that was a really long answer.
That was a really long answer.
That's my answer in a nutshell. Yes.
That's great. So you mentioned that at your job, you are the first lady to play that role actively. So I'd like to ask you, can you discuss with us some job opportunities or career paths within CIS that the ladies here can, look into, and how they can determine that probably that path in CIS is the best one for them?
Absolutely. So I'll say, first of all, thank you all, ladies, for doing what you do. We need you. We need more women in this field. We are largely outnumbered. It's been reported that the global cybersecurity workforce is roughly around 24-25% females. It is a man's world, and I will say that in critical infrastructure, that number goes down to about 12%. That's been reported. So even fewer women in critical infrastructure sectors, and which can be challenging. I say that because we're women, and it can be challenging because it is a man's world. And so I think it's important for one of the reasons I do what I do is because I think it's important for women to do this work. It's not man's work. It is not, there's anything that the men are doing, a woman can do. So there's just historically, it's been men doing the work. So if this is an area that you're interested in, if you love the reward of having very meaningful work where you are saving lives, and that's what I feel that we do. There's a lot of different areas you can work with, and titles that you might be looking for. So the titles vary. You'll see things that are OT, operational technology, cybersecurity engineer. You'll see ICS, industrial control system, cybersecurity engineer. You'll see my title is sort of broad, critical infrastructure protection technical advisor. I should have been a doctor. It's a mouthful. It's a lot of syllables. You'll see areas in renewable energy. There's a lot of movement right now towards using renewable resources. And so there's a lot of job opportunities in the space of renewable energy. There's a lot of room in the GRC space, governance, risk, and compliance, especially compliance, because a lot of these systems require federal regulation. So a lot of actually, compliance is a good way to start, because you can start to see the systems and understand how they behave in these unique networks. And so there's a lot of, in any of those areas, there's room for women, and I just think I think women have they're better at communicating, and that's a real skill required in this area. I just think and I just think it's just I'm very proud when I tell people what I do. People are always impressed. I go down to nuclear generation facilities, and I'm there and I get to be on the front lines of the news, and there's just something very exciting and rewarding about this sector for me, that I am contributing to the greater good. I am keeping our critical assets safe, assets, so that we can have our power, so that my children and everyone's children can have clean drinking water. These are the systems to me that matter, and that really bring the most meaning to me personally. And if that's something that speaks to you, this is very rewarding work, very challenging work. It's lucrative, it pays well. I find that certain areas in engineering pay more than other areas of cybersecurity, depending on your skill set, especially. That comes to play for I see a lot of engineers who transition into cybersecurity. So there's that advantage of knowing that. So there's a lot of work. And the thing about it is that there is not, it's, I will say, again, going back to some of the challenges of IT and OT, is that our IT, our digital infrastructure, has been around so much longer than, I'm sorry, forgive me, our operational technology has been around so much longer than our IT systems. Cybersecurity wasn't a thing. Power was here long before cybersecurity. So a lot of this infrastructure was not designed with security in mind. So we have to be very mindful of these systems that are up and running, and they can't be turned off while we're implementing our practices. So because this aspect is new, it continues to be evolving in a growing sector, and there are not enough people who have this skill. So when you see these jobs, if you have the skill, you can be very competitive. The way I see it is critical infrastructure isn't going anywhere in the face of the tech layoffs that we've seen after COVID. Critical infrastructure, our jobs have remained stable. No one got laid off. None of us got laid off because we have to keep the lights on. So we were considered as essential could be. So in terms of stability in your career, this field is very stable. It is a lot of work to get up to speed and to learn the different areas. But when you have that skill set, it's very valuable. And anywhere you go in the world, there's critical infrastructure systems that need protection from our current and advancing cyber threats. We need more ladies, though. So I'm very, very happy to see women who want to go into this sector, because it's man's world, so we need more women to step up and seize their place in the world.
Exactly. We need more women. So can you share with us a technology or a tool that you are excited about, and how you see it shaping the future of cybersecurity?
Yeah, right now I'm playing with a brand new tool from Microsoft. It's called ICS Pector, and it is an open source tool. There's a GitHub. I'm happy to share with. I can share it with the team, or I can email it to you, some additional resources if people are interested. But it's open source, so that's mean it's free, and it's a really nice forensic tool that we use to work with some of our programmable logic controllers. So essentially, some of the microprocessors that operate devices in the field, and it gives us a really great new look into devices, as I mentioned, that we can't typically play with because they're always running. So I have in my home, I have my little industrial controls, my OT lab, where I play with things and I try things, or maybe I hear something on a podcast or in the news, something that's new that I might be able to implement. I try to create a similar, environment in my lab, and then I'm able to test it. And so that tool gives us some visibility into these devices, which we might not have normally had. And that's really exciting right now to be able to do that. And I'm using it to really kind of to just to kind of dig a little deeper into my work, kind of doing a little more deeper inspections and such. Bear in mind that a lot of the work that we have to do during operations has to remain passive, and then we leverage a maintenance outage window to dig deep and implement some of these tools that are very exciting to use their system. But I'm loving that right now.
That's great. That's really nice to know that you are still learning in the course of your work. So, can you
Always learning.
yes, can you share with us the most rewarding experience that you've had in your career and how that experience has impacted your journey?
Yeah, there's been a lot of rewards. I think about things that I did that were technical and things that I do that aren't technical that have been so rewarding in this field. I was I was able to inject a compromised deliverable from a third party vendor. That was something I had realized could potentially have malware on it, and so we obviously don't want to use malware and introduce that into the bulk electric system. So my company honored me. I did get a company award for stopping that from being a potential cyber threat. That was incredibly rewarding. And to have a team of co-workers to acknowledge and recognize, I think that's very important, to acknowledge people when they do good work, or for their efforts. And then I will say the greatest reward for me is I really enjoy speaking, especially to women. I have a deep passion to bring more women into the field. A lot of what the cyber girls program is very similar to something that I do here in San Diego, where I work with women in cybersecurity. We have an affiliate here. I'm a director on the board, but one of the most rewarding things I've done is I created a program here. We have a Girl Scout organization with young girls, and I worked with some of the teams, like Palo Alto Networks created a cybersecurity patch for the Girl Scouts, and I helped to create a program so that these young girls, it started, my niece is 8 years old, so I started with her, but the young girls are earning their cybersecurity badges. And so I run around all over the town, sometimes we're in parks, sometimes we're in people's living rooms, sometimes we do big events at the Girl Scouts headquarters. But my mission is to get every Girl Scout in the city their cybersecurity badges, and to start to teach them about cybersecurity in an age-appropriate way. I speak with very young girls, 5, 6, 7 years old, and that they're very young, and they don't have computers yet, but you can bet that they are grabbing their mothers or parents and guardians' cell phones, and they know how to get on YouTube, and they know how to scroll, and they know how to open apps. And so we start with just online safety conversations, and they start to become more age appropriate. The conversation I would have with a high school girl is very different than that I would have with a child, so we have to be very mindful to working with children. But when I see these girls getting their badges, and when I see young women getting their first jobs, getting their certificates, I just cheer for everyone. I cheer for everyone. Yes, another girl is in the field. That's a victory for us as women. And so I champion that. And so I would have to say that the greatest reward for me is not even so much a plaque or a certificate that I got, even though it's satisfying. The greatest reward is knowing that I've done a small part to bring more women into the field, and that I've seen I saw a commercial. It was very powerful, where they make it's always a big thing. I am the first woman. I am the only woman. Like I said, I'm the first woman in my job, but it's like we're tired of being the first. We're tired of being the only. I want us to be one of many women, not just the first, not the only, not the greatest. It's just we're one of many, where that it's no longer has to be said that this is the first woman. this is the only woman. It's just that there are women cybersecurity engineers. This is what women do. And that's the goal of organizations such as, obviously the Cyber Girls program, Cyber Safe Foundation, organizations like Women in Cybersecurity that I'm a part of. I think that we're all working for that same cause, and really to provide those opportunities for women so that they can support themselves and have rewarding work, and go home and feel good about the work that they're doing in the world. I think that's so important for us, and I think every woman should have that opportunity, and no woman should ever feel like they're not capable of doing this. I was young. My first 5 years, I'm Latina. I'm Veronica. I was Veronica Vallejo. Rauch is my married name. I lost my identity, but I did not see female references. I did not see women doing the hard work. I thought when I was younger that the hard work was for men, and it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized that that was a lie. That wasn't the reality. And I love to see women being successful in the field. So I am here to cheer all of you on as you work and continue through your journeys. It's just such an incredible field.
Thank you so much. So now I would like to take a few questions from the chat box. The ladies have been asking some questions, so we just want to look at that. And someone says, is it possible to transition from other cybersecurity roles like SOC, for example, to CIS?
Yes, that's how I did it. Now, I will say that I started in compliance, which I think is probably the most will probably be the easiest place to begin. Start working in the compliance area. My first job was a security compliance engineer. So it's a very possible path. I was working in a security operations center. I learned my fundamentals of networking, and then I started to learn the regulatory laws and procedures. So I think it's very possible. I'm a perfect example. It's exactly what I did, transitioning. So really kind of looking into. I find that if you begin, what is challenging is once you start working with more critical systems, they will require people with more experience. So if you're looking for your first opportunity, perhaps maybe move into a manufacturing sector where it's not critical. Perhaps it's just production, and you can start to learn these systems in maybe something that's not critical. That's a good place to start, is to start learning the functions, to start learning the specific ICS, industrial control system protocols, to start learning the tools that are used in this field. Because once you have that skill, then you're able to leverage it into other areas with more criticality. That's typically how you would start in this area.
Take another question, which says, what are the core skills someone should have to enter this journey of CIS? I know you mentioned some skills, but if you can just give us a few core skills that someone could have to enter this field.
Yeah, I think, some people come from an IT background. Some people are operational technology engineers. Some people are cybersecurity professionals. We find people seem to kind of gravitate from these areas. So if you're already in IT or you're studying cybersecurity, you're already on the right path because you're starting to understand those fundamentals. I would say learn your hardware. That's kind of I don't know if you do any sort of CompTIA programs, but there's the A+. Because you're working with huge hardware. I mean, massive hardware when we talk about industrial control systems. So I think it's important to really kind of understand and be good at troubleshooting that sort of thing, because both in IT and with hardware, that becomes important. And then I will also add, and I mentioned it briefly before, but I will emphasize the soft skills, because this isn't the kind of work where if you're the type of person who wants to just work from home and be behind a laptop, this probably isn't going to be, you know, the job for you, because it is so interactive, because you are responding to these robust systems, because you do have to perform inspections, you know. So in that regard, it becomes very important to be able to communicate effectively. So, you know, make sure you're getting out there and you're networking, and you're meeting people, and you're having, even if it's uncomfortable, you know, doing things like this, you know. I was terrified to do podcasts. I still get nervous before I do things like this. I just do it and do it and do it. And the more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes and the easier it gets.
That is very true. So thank you for your time, Veronica. We've learned so much. I've learned that I should prepare, and then I should look for things, and I should research. And also, safety is very key and paramount, especially in this critical infrastructure security career. So I want to thank you so much for your time. Is there a way the ladies can connect with you, probably via LinkedIn or?
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. I don't know if I should, do you want me to share it to you or drop it in the chat, or what would be the best way for me to get that to?
Any works, if you can drop it in the chat, that would be great.
Okay, I am on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anyone. If you have any additional questions, please reach out to me. Very, very happy to, you know, like I mentioned, that because we have so few women in the field, you know, I would love to connect you with some additional resources and people to help you begin your journey, if that's what you choose to do. But I will say that I wish everyone here the best on your journey. I really do. This is such an incredible field, and we need you, and you inspire me. I love that you're doing these sessions and that you're all working hard for your futures, and I wish you all the best on your professional careers.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Good luck to everyone.
Good luck to you too.
Thank you.
So we would like to thank our sponsors. They are the ones who have ensured that we've had a very great program: InfoSec Institute, ISC2, Cisco Networking Academy, Fortinet, Checkpoint, Policy Wizard, Practical DevOps, INE, Microsoft ADC, and ATO. So join us for another session. It's bye from me here. Have a great day.